frozen on the Eiger's north face. The mountain loomed above me like a slab of black glass, impossibly sheer, impossibly vast, its surface streaked with frozen veins of ice that glinted under the pale light of the sky. The Eiger's north face had been called many things: the wall of death, the white spider, the place where ambition froze into silence. Standing at its base, I understood why men had both worshipped and feared it. The cold was not merely temperature here, it was weight. It pressed down from every angle, seeping through layers of fabric, crawling beneath skin, settling into the marrow. My breath emerged in shallow bursts, each one crystallizing before my eyes before being carried upward into the black void of stone. The air was thin, brittle, sharp as glass dust, and each inhale carved itself into the throat. I had come to see the route where so many had fallen, to walk the line carved by desperation and failure, and to find the place where Tony Kurz had taken his last breath. The story had haunted me for years. The young climber, suspended on the face, only a rope length away from salvation, whispering his final words into a storm that swallowed him whole. But stories never capture the weight of silence. The face stretched upward like an endless wall, its crevices swallowed in shadow, its ridges coated in jagged snow that clung precariously to the rock. The higher the gaze traveled, the less it seemed like stone and more like some monstrous body, a living wall of frozen flesh. The wind moaned through the gaps, whistling like breath sucked through broken teeth. I began the ascent with careful steps, crampons biting into the ice, picks swinging into hardened crust. Each impact rang sharp in the stillness, a metallic clink that echoed far too long before vanishing into the void above. The rope trailed behind me, a thin lifeline swallowed quickly by the emptiness below. The climb was not fast. It was deliberate, each movement a negotiation with gravity, each pause a battle against the creeping numbness in fingers and toes. The rock was slick, darkened by frozen meltwater, and every ledge felt ready to give way. Hours passed like this, though time blurred in the mountain's silence. Light shifted slowly, shadows lengthening, the sun crawling across the ridges until the wall stood in dim half-glow. The world below had long vanished into a blur of white clouds, leaving only the rock, the ice, and me suspended between them. Then the air changed. The wind died, not gradually, but as if smothered. The sound of my own breath became deafening. The crunch of crampons on ice rang too loud, hollow, echoing strangely against the stone. I paused, pressed against the face, and felt the vibration travel through the rock. A low hum, subtle, but present, as though the mountain itself had a pulse. The smell reached me then, faint but undeniable. Not the clean sharpness of snow, not the earthy tang of rock, but something sour, metallic, stale. It lingered on the air, drifting into my mask, clinging to the fabric. The scent of rust, of blood dried and frozen, carried from somewhere higher on the wall. I climbed on, though each movement grew heavier, as if the mountain had become magnetized, pulling at my limbs, urging me downward. My gloves brushed a patch of stone, and the surface was slick, not with water, not with ice, but with something oily that caught the fading light in a sheen too dark to name. And then I saw it. A rope dangled above me, frozen stiff, half buried in the ice where the mountain had tried to consume it. Its fibers were frayed, stiffened into brittle strands, yet still clung stubbornly to the wall. I reached out, touched it with a trembling hand, and felt the age within it, the years locked inside the frost. It was his rope. The higher I climbed along its line, the heavier the silence grew. My chest tightened, not only with altitude, but with a weight pressing inward from all directions. The shadows deepened until the wall seemed to breathe, exhaling a faint mist from crevices that should have held only ice. I found the ledge then, narrow and precarious, where the story had said he hung. The rope stretched taut into a blackened hole above, disappearing into a patch of ice so deep it looked bottomless. The smell was stronger here, thick, metallic, clinging to the back of the throat. I leaned close to the ice, and for a moment, I swore I saw something beneath the surface. A face, blurred by the frost, distorted by layers of frozen water, but there, the suggestion of hollow eyes, of lips cracked and parted. The ice was clouded, milky, but shapes shifted behind it as though caught mid-motion, reaching upward. My heart hammered against my ribs, each beat an explosion of sound in the silence. I stumbled back, boots slipping against the ledge, hands clawing for grip. The rope above creaked faintly, though no wind moved it. The ice whispered, not sound, but the vibration again, low and resonant, crawling through my bones. The ledge narrowed to nothingness, but I could not pull away. My eyes locked on the frost, where the face had been, and I saw more. Hands pressed outward, palms flat against the glassy surface, fingers spread as though pleading to break through. Shadows swirled behind them, elongated bodies writhing within the glacier. The silence pressed tighter. It filled my ears, crushed my skull, until my own thoughts seemed to scatter. I knew then what had taken him, not the cold, not the rope, not the climb. It was the silence itself, the weight of something older than the mountain, something that dwelled in the ice and waited for voices to draw near. Tony Kurz had not fallen. He had not merely frozen. He had been swallowed. The rope trembled again, faintly, though my hands were nowhere near it. It quivered like a plucked string, the vibration traveling down its length into the wall, into me. The faces in the ice pressed harder, mouths stretching open in silent screams that echoed only in the marrow of my bones. I tore myself from the ledge, climbing downward with frantic motions, every strike of the pick desperate, every foothold barely caught. The wall seemed to grow slicker, darker, as though urging me to remain. My lungs burned, the smell of metal thick in my throat, my vision narrowing into white bursts. But I did not stop. I don't remember reaching the bottom. I don't remember the last half of the descent. All I remember is the weight lifting faintly once my boots struck solid ground again. The wind returned, howling across the slope, and the sound of it nearly drove me to my knees in relief. Noise. Any noise. I looked back only once. The north face loomed in the fading light, black and endless, its ridges painted red by the last fingers of the sun. The rope still dangled there, faint and brittle, a thread of memory clinging to the wall. I thought I saw movement behind the ice, faint and shifting, but I turned away before it could become more. The mountain had taken him. It would take others, and all it required was silence. The broken rope on Matterhorn. The first time I saw the Matterhorn, it seemed less a mountain than a monument. Its peak cut the sky with such violence that the horizon itself appeared wounded, split open by a blade of ice and stone. I had read the stories, the triumphs and the tragedies, the famous day in 1865 when men reached the summit only to fall into legend with the snap of a rope. But words never prepared me for the presence of it. The air around the mountain felt different, denser, as though each breath contained the weight of generations who had stood beneath it and wondered if they would ever return. Cold seeped not only from the snow but from the rock itself, an ancient chill older than memory, pressing down with invisible hands. The clouds circled its peak like vultures, unwilling to leave, waiting for something inevitable. I began the ascent early, long before the light had reached the upper ridges. Each step crunched into the crusted snow, each exhale a plume of vapor that rose and vanished against the cliff walls. My crampons bit with a sharp metallic scrape, the sound bouncing upward into the hollow expanse of the north face. The silence there was heavy, broken only by the occasional groan of shifting ice, like bones creaking in a restless grave. Hours passed in this rhythm. Axe step, breathe. The thin rope dragged behind me, brushing against the wall, its sound faint and dry like thread fraying. I told myself the stories were only history, but I could not shake the thought of Edward Whymper and his team. For men falling into oblivion, a single rope breaking, the mountain claiming its due. The ledges narrowed as I climbed higher. Rock jetted out like blackened teeth, and ice clung to them in jagged shards. I moved carefully, pressing myself against the cold stone, feeling its rough surface bite through the layers of my gloves. My body ached, muscles trembling from effort, but it was not fatigue that unnerved me. It was the silence. At a certain height, the world below vanished into cloud, and the sky above turned a pale, washed-out gray. I was suspended between two voids, the only sound the rhythm of my own heartbeat pounding against my ears. That was when I first noticed the rope. It was there, embedded in the ice ahead, frozen into the wall as if it had grown from the mountain itself. Its fibers were dark, stiff, eaten away by decades of wind and frost, but unmistakably a rope. I stared at it for a long moment, gloved hand hovering just inches away. The frayed ends told a story I already knew. A line that had once held men's lives, severed by fate or by chance, left here to rot into the mountain. I touched it, and the cold shot into me deeper than any ice I had yet felt. It was not simply the chill of frozen rope, but something else, something preserved in it. The smell reached me then, sharp, metallic, like rust and dried blood. It coated the back of my throat, sour and suffocating, though the air was otherwise clean. I climbed higher, but the rope seemed to follow me. In every crevice, in every crack of the ice, I found fragments of it. Threads curled like veins beneath the frost, blackened strands tangled in the snow. And with each discovery, the silence deepened, pressing closer, until the sound of my own movements began to echo unnaturally, as though the mountain itself were hollow and filled with unseen chambers. I reached a ledge then, narrow and slick with frost. The wind had died completely, leaving me in a bubble of stillness. And there, embedded deep in the ice at eye level, I saw something trapped. It was not clear at first, clouded by layers of frost. But as I leaned closer, I saw the outline of fingers, 4 of them curled inward, caught forever in the frozen wall. The rope trailed from them, stiffened, leading upward into the ice where the rest of the body lay hidden. My stomach turned. I could not move. The hand seemed almost alive, skin waxen beneath the frost, nails cracked but intact, the impression of life caught in death. The smell was stronger here, filling the air with a cloying metallic tang that made breathing shallow and painful. I pulled back, but as I did, the rope above shifted. It moved, just slightly, just enough to creak against the rock. My head snapped upward, and in the whiteness above, I swore I saw shapes. Figures moving across the ice, their outlines blurred by snow and distance, their motions slow, deliberate, unnatural. They did not climb as men climb. They drifted, their limbs bending at odd angles, their heads tilted too far to one side. Yet the rope connected them all, a single line running through their frozen forms, as though the mountains still held them captive, puppets on a frayed string. My chest tightened. My axe slipped against the rock, sending a spray of ice downward into the void. The figures did not react. They swayed faintly, as though pulled by a current of wind I could not feel. Their faces were hidden, but I did not want to see them. I descended then, quickly, recklessly, hands trembling with every swing of the axe. The mountain did not resist, but it did not release me easily. The rope was everywhere, caught in cracks, tangled around stones, brushing against my boots though no wind moved it. At times, I felt it tighten against my leg, pulling faintly, urging me upward again. The silence grew unbearable. My thoughts began to fragment, breaking into scattered images. Men suspended in air, ropes tightening around their throats, hands clawing at ice. My own breath came ragged, shallow, each inhale scraping raw against my lungs. The air felt poisoned with memory. When I reached the base again, the world seemed unreal. The wind returned suddenly, rushing down the slopes, filling my ears with blessed noise. The clouds shifted, and the sun broke briefly through, painting the peak in pale fire. But when I looked up, the rope was still there, faint against the black stone, swaying though the air below was calm. And for a moment, I thought I saw the figures again, hanging in silence, their bodies bent unnaturally, their faces hidden in shadow. The rope had broken once. It had never truly fallen.